Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A new episode of The World Today, where we are going to discuss many headlines published on national and international websites. And we are going to focus on our national or local and regional, and we are going to move to international arenas. Before we start, let me first welcome my dear guest live here in the studio, Engineer Hossam, our political analyst of this episode. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
My pleasure.
And we are going to start immediately. Our first headlines are coming from Al-Ahram Online, where we read: Egypt's El-Sisi talks roads for youth at closing ceremony of national conference. The president said the government will study amendments proposed by the youth on the controversial protest law, urged youth to volunteer in the community. Among other topics, or among other recommendations of the conference, which turned to be presidential directives as listed in the speech of President El-Sisi, which was delivered yesterday. Sir, first, let's have a quick evaluation of the past 3 days. Whenever it comes to those 3 days in Sharm el-Sheikh, President El-Sisi said in very few words they were of the best the Egyptians had had in the past few years. First, do you agree with him?
Big partially, yes.
Okay. Regarding the list of recommendations, which, as I said, turned to be presidential directives. In fact, President El-Sisi said a lot of things. First, the amendments of the so-called or controversial protest law. With or against?
I'm against it, of course.
Against the amendments or against the law?
No, I'm with the law. I'm not really aware of the amendments yet. However, I'm totally against disrupting Egyptian life by demonstrating for whatever cause or whatever reason. Mm-hmm. We are in a transitional state. The mindset of the people is really against demonstrating for whatever reason. When we stabilize, when we deal with the conspiracies, not only one, but so many conspiracies internally and externally, then we can have a normal life. Mm-hmm. and demonstrate, but still demonstrate within the law. Yeah. Whatever law that would pass by the parliament, mm-hmm. we will concede and agree to it. Mm-hmm. However, allowing demonstrations on the streets while we're facing terrorism, I'm totally against it, even if President Sisi approves it.
Mm-hmm. Regarding also the cases of the youth imprisoned, and I don't know if there are a lot of cases which need studying, like President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said yesterday that every case is going to be studied, and if there is something which should be done, it will be done. Don't you think that this is a process going on already, or it needs directives from the president?
Some of the cases could be granted to go free, mm-hmm. If they're not yet prosecuted. Mm-hmm. And still the president has every right by the constitution, even if they were prosecuted, to grant them a free permission. However, some of the youth are really taken in a very naive fashion. Yeah. They follow the mainstream of the so-called revolutionaries. Youth are usually hyped. They have so much energy to dispense. Hence, they're usually taken into that path. We should review these cases and allow them to go free. Yep. But some are really corroborating, being paid to do, disruption in the street. Yep. These cases.
How we can differentiate between both?
I think
Is it easy?
It's easy for the state to define, okay, who's been taken and who's corroborating and enticing the.
I mean, you can find a sect which is brainwashed.
Yes.
Others who are that naive to just believe
Go with the flow,
whatever,
yeah.
whatever they are ordered to, or
Yeah.
just to obey, and that's it. And others are paid, as you've kindly
Exactly.
mentioned, of course. But to differentiate between these sects, I don't know if this is an easy task or no. But since you have said it's the state's mission, it's okay.
It's commonly known.
Regarding the Egyptian presidency coordinating with the cabinet to found a national center to develop young people for political, social leadership roles. This was also another part or another statement said by President El-Sisi. You know what really, it's not annoying me, it's making some troubles regarding the choice of those people. How I'm going to choose among the youth who is qualified for this, who is talented in that. You know, whenever I do have centers, great, to qualify cadres, okay, but how I'm going to choose them? What are the rules, criteria, elements?
The selection criteria.
Yeah.
I'm having a critique since 2 years back for more than that.
Okay.
It's not only about choosing, but about titling it. As if we're preparing people for leadership, as if leadership could be taken into a curriculum. This is, I disagree with.
Okay.
If you
Leadership is a talent, not skills to be acquired.
it's not even a talent.
Okay.
You have to be talented, but you have to take a very long path that would take so much of your aging in order to be able to be a leader. If you're talking to Hossam Nasser, the same person who's sitting with you now, if you're talking with him
10 years ago.
20 years, 30 years, he's not the same Hossam Nasser.
Sure.
I've gained a lot of experience. I've gained a lot of expertise. I became more practical rather than emotional in my youth. Hence, you gain some and you lose some. Having the equation, having the youth with the energy, with the emotion, you have to train them, but not to tell them that I'm training you to become after a year a minister or a governor. This is too much.
Sir, you are going to be criticized here, and they are or other voices are going to give you examples. For example, how old was Tony Blair when he was the UK Prime Minister? How old is the current Canadian Prime Minister? And when it comes to the criteria, selection criteria, as you've kindly mentioned, why I should put age as one of the rules or of the criteria?
I never said age, I said experience.
Okay.
And the answer back is, was Tony Blair or Cameron trained by the state in one of the centers?
Of course not.
Right? They have taken their usual path of life. They have been distinguished early enough, fine.
Okay.
They can lead, okay. And the people will judge if they are capable of leading or not. But getting someone or choosing someone or defining a selection criteria and put him on a training course for 6 months or a year and said, now you're capable of leading the state or becoming a minister or becoming a head of a big organization, that's too much. That's too much to take.
Last but not least, let's tackle this important point, the importance of volunteer work. This was also tackled in the speech of President El-Sisi yesterday. You know, many Egyptians would think about volunteering as something just for the elite or for the rich people, as if volunteering with your time is nothing if compared with just donations and giving money to this person or the other. How do you see the difference, and how do you see this culture we have? Because President El-Sisi said something very important, that the first mission of the volunteers should be eradicating illiteracy. And this has nothing to do with being a wealthy person or a rich man.
Well, we have an example. Usually people do not like that example. The army. It's not really...
I like it.
It's not really voluntary, but it's some sort of compulsory volunteering. You're gaining what? You're gaining the low cost of having someone on board in order to do a certain job.
Yep.
And this is what some people dislike about having the army engaged in civilian matters. However, we're faced a situation that we need a quick development, quick wins that could never be achieved with the usual bureaucracy, and it could never be cost justified with the usual pay, even for government employees. If you compare a soldier who's been compulsory volunteered in a track, if you compare him to his equivalent in the government, the government one would be 5 or 6 times more paid than him. So the efficiency and the cost justification forced President Sisi to take that path in order to do the quick wins, the quick development that the country needs.
Yep.
So hence, in answer to your question, volunteering is open for everybody.
And it can be in so many ways.
Sure.
Sir, you've been all the time, I think, all over the years in your career dealing with the youth and listening to their opinions, points of views, stuff like that. And I think that we are learning from our experience. The past 3 days were the first international conference for youth in Sharm el-Sheikh, but it's going to be held annually. What are the disadvantages, the demerits? What are the things which we should avoid next year?
There is no disadvantages. There are things that has to complement the conference effort. The conference is a kind of a show, giving a statement, making some sort of a propaganda about how to communicate with the youth. But it's not really a forum. It's not a mechanism in order to engage 30 or 40% of the population to get them with the statehood direction. It needs more than that. It needs actions, milestones, recommendations, resources, getting to the grassroots in every bit of the country. These kind of things cannot be handled by conference.
Yep.
The conference is usually the end of so many milestones. However, it was a good start. It made a lot of movement.
Why I'm asking this question in specific, because as far as I understand, whenever there is an annual event which is going to take place every year, meaning that I should prepare for the coming event in the final day of the current event.
Yes.
If I am of those organizers or those behind the camera, I should prepare from now, because 12 months are nothing if it comes to a big event like that. If I want to do something different this time, or to attract more people, or to see things on the ground, a process going on, not only dreams. Foundations, rules, basics.
It's more than that. I mean, at the end of the day, the conference is kind of a festivity.
Okay.
It is not an action. It is not meant to develop things on the grounds. So it has to be the end, not the start.
Okay.
So the next conference, I hope it would be demonstrating results on the streets.
Amen.
How did we engage people? How did we make them better? How did we make the youth contribute to the welfare of the society? And promote that by numbers. If we do that, then it will be a successful conference. But for the first one, it created a lot of propaganda, it created a lot of movement, a lot of stereotyping as well. So it was good.
As a start, at least.
As a start.
Let's go to the World Bulletin for some regional news, where we read, Russia denies role in bloody strike on Syria school. Russia denied any involvement in deadly airstrikes on a Syrian school and rejected a UN-led investigation showing its ally Damascus had carried out chemical attacks as Moscow's relations with the West took another hit. Expected that the to react this way regarding Russia?
Russia is the prevailing force on the ground. It is the dominant force on the ground. I mean, the West is kind of sidelined regarding Syria. And Syria is an extremely strategic location, extremely strategic. It's more strategic than Egypt. Hence, the West does not like what he sees. So they will commit Russia to so many different crimes. But Putin and Russia will continue
This was my coming
sidelining
question.
them. Yeah.
Will this have any impact on the Russian attitude?
No.
At all?
It's not going to change the Russian attitude, because the most country, the most superpower that could be hit, really hit, if Syria is lost, is Russia. Because you're shutting down their access to the Mediterranean Sea. And Syria is the only access for Russia to the Mediterranean. So to them, it is the top strategic national interest.
Yep. To the Khalij Times, where we continue to read, Saudi Arabia shot down missile fire towards Mecca. The Arab coalition fighting in Yemen said on Thursday that it has intercepted a ballistic missile that hit 65 kilometers away from Saudi Arabia, holy city of Mecca, saying it was fired by militias in Yemen.
No comment really. I do not understand. I mean, why would a Muslim, even if he's a Houthi or Shiite, shoot a missile to demolish the most cherished location in the Islamic world and in the world as well?
And because of this, it's a very dangerous development if it is as described by the Saudis.
You put it right. If it is as described.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of skepticism about the way it was propagated. I don't think the Houthis would do it. I don't know who's responsible for this. Maybe someone is trying to antagonize the relationship between the Sunnis and Shias,
More than what's going on already on the ground.
It could be a preparation for something coming. So.
This is something which is coming. I think it's in the Daily Star, where UN peace plan for Yemen seems to sideline Hadi. A UN peace proposal to end the 19-month-old war in Yemen appears aimed at sidelining exiled President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi and setting up a government of less divisive figures, according to a copy seen by Reuters. I cannot understand these statements in general and this word in specific, less divisive figures. Is Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi is such a divisive figure?
As if he's not sidelined already. Who's ruling Yemen now? Do you know who's ruling Yemen? Is it Abdurrabbu Mansour or Ali Abdullah Saleh or the Houthis, or who's ruling Yemen? It's a country in a state of chaos.
If those who are ruling Yemen are already in Yemen.
Exactly.
The internationally, the so-called, as we are all the time describing them, as they are, of course, the internationally recognized government, but they are not in Sana'a, and Sana'a is still under the Houthis' control since September 2014, I think.
It's a country without a rulership. Nobody is ruling Yemen. Nobody. But we don't know. It's a very convoluted situation that nobody can describe. Even the most astute political analyst, if he tried to put the jigsaw puzzle on Yemen,
but
he
all
would
the time,
fail.
sir, people are going to ask about this very traditional question: who is the alternative? I mean, is it going to be a presidential council, for example?
I think it would remain like that for some time until the Yemenis realize that they have to live together, because they are all Yemenis, and they have to find a solution coming from within, not from without, not from a regional power such as Saudi or Iran, not from an international superpowers like the UK or the US. It has to be a Yemeni solution. And
but
Yemen,
it didn't work in Libya, for example.
Yeah, Yemen is extremely polarized since 50 years ago, since the Egyptian intervention during Imam Ahmad's and the aftermath.
1948.
It's no, the Imam Ahmad was ousted in the 60s.
Okay.
When the Egyptians committed forces. So Yemen is a very special setup. It has a lot of tribal connections, a lot of sectarian connections. They have to stop the polarization and start living as Yemenis, not as Houthis or Shias or different sects. They have to put the national interest of Yemen first.
Some similarities between Yemen and Libya, as you were describing the situation of of being polarized, of having tribes and factions and stuff like that. But what's going on in Libya with Faiz al-Sarraj and Aqila Ratib, with the parliament on a side, and Faiz al-Sarraj and his government on one side, also it didn't work.
The outcome is the same. However, Yemen is different from Libya. Yemen is fundamentally tribal, fundamentally polarized. Libya was not like that. Even before Gaddafi was not like that. It was a kind of a shaped state.
You mean history is repeating itself in a way?
No, history tells you how a country could be remedied, or a country issue could be remedied. The Libyan solution is across the door, but the Yemen resolution will take a very long time because of the fundamental tribal and sectarian issues inside the Yemeni culture. Or
before people there who are in control are only thinking about their own interests without thinking about the national interest of the country itself.
The Libyans will be quicker than the Yemenis, realizing that.
Yeah, because I don't know how former Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh is moving that freely and having his forces just fighting side by the Houthis. And at a time, he knew well that he will never return back to authority.
But he is the kind of a status quo president. He is the one actually ruling Yemen. He seems to be fighting Houthis, and he was at the time sidelining with Houthis. So it's a very
complicated
very
political
complicated.
game,
very complicated,
which I'll never understand.
Yeah. Nobody will.
Let me take you to Iraq and to The Guardian, where we read about Daesh using hostages as human shields in Mosul. UN says so. Daesh militants have taken tens of thousands of men, women and children hostage in the city of Mosul and executed at least 232 people on Wednesday, according to the United Nations. With Kurdish and Iraqi forces rapidly closing in on the city, Daesh has shipped civilians from areas around Mosul into strategic areas. I don't know, this was not a surprise for me. Whenever Daesh is there, they would do whatever it takes to defend their own bastions and their own bases without having mercy on people. They do not see, or they do not know what mercy is.
Expected, and they are more and more squeezed into a situation that is trying to put them out of the equation. Whether this consortium of forces is serious or not, however, they are under pressure. So they were criminals before, they will be criminals now, and they will be criminals forever. And they are not Daesh, they are brothers, they are brotherhoods, they are Ikhwan, right? So I don't like the term Daesh, they are the Ikhwan. And this was the hard way of trying to create an Islamicized kind of state after they failed in Egypt.
Yeah.
Did you hear anything about Daesh before the 30th of June?
No.
Where they ever existed, even as a name?
But no, they were other terrorists or mercenaries paid to fight or paid to kill, whatever, you name it, I mean, but under other names.
But the idea of having a state and to call them ISIS or ISIL never really appeared before June 2013, when we took the brotherhoods out of the equation.
Yep.
So that was the alternative the West has created. Now the West appears to be fighting Daesh, but they're not fighting Daesh.
I like the word appear to be.
Of course,
yeah.
Because they are the creators of Daesh, but they are losing power on Syria. And if they leave it, Russia, after settling Syria, will intervene in Mosul.
Yeah.
Hence, they decided to put Daesh out of the equation in order to remain in another strategic part of the Arab world, which is Iraq, near the Turkish border, near the Kurdish settlements. So it is, again, a manipulation by the West, appearing to be fighting Daesh.
But by the end
and they
of
could
the
be
story,
fighting. They could be fighting seriously. They could have taken a decision to take them off.
This Mosul issue will it end in a good way? I mean, some or analysts are optimistic when the Iraqi fighters or the Iraqi army interfered. With the intervention of the Iraqis, then I should at least guarantee that there are goodwills.
Well, the Iraqi army right now is not the Iraqi army before Saddam or at the time of Saddam.
Yeah.
And they failed miserably in so many things. And they are now backed by the US, the UK, the Turkish, because the strategic game has changed. So if I was using someone in order to create a strategic position in order to take Syria, and that has failed, so now it became a dangerous point. Threatening Turkey, threatening Saudi, threatening the US interest in the region if they don't take them off. So appearing to be the US realized that they have to take them off.
Musical